Sweatshirt on a warm night. Swing and a miss. He delivers 2-2 to Surhoff. Strike, kicks and fires. Swing and a miss. Strikes, he kicks, he delivers. Swing and a miss. Pedro winds, kicks and fires. Strike three, swinging, and this one's over. 2 pitch. We got it. Off pitch. Swing and a miss. Another 2-2 pitch. Breaking ball. Swing and a miss. Pedro Martinez with 15.
In the sweltering haze of a Dominican summer, a wiry boy named Pedro Jaime Martinez stood beneath a mango tree, hurling rocks at the fruit like they were baseballs. His aim was sharp, his arm a blur. It was a game to most, but for Pedro, it was a rehearsal for destiny. In a place where poverty weighed heavy and dreams often wilted in the heat, he had already chosen a different path, one paved not by privilege, but by unrelenting fire. Born on October 25, 1971, in the dusty village of Manoguayabo, Dominican Republic, Pedro grew up surrounded by hardship. His father, Pablo, worked tirelessly in construction, while his mother, Leopoldina, cleaned houses to feed their 6 children. Their home was modest, corrugated tin, concrete walls, no promises. But inside those walls thrived an intensity and determination that no statistic could ever measure. Pedro's older brother, Ramon, was the first to carve a trail out of the barrio, making it to Major League Baseball as a promising pitcher. He was taller, more conventional, what scouts considered the mold. Pedro, on the other hand, was slight, barely scraping 170 pounds, and at just 5'11", he was often told he was too small, too fragile, too unlikely. Rejection became routine, but so did resolve. What Pedro lacked in size, he made up for with obsession. He studied hitters like puzzles, learning their habits, their tells, their breaking points. His arm was electric, but his mind was lethal. And somewhere in that modest frame brewed the most deceptive changeup the game had ever seen. In 1988, the Los Angeles Dodgers took a chance on him, signing the 17-year-old as an amateur free agent. Pedro arrived in the United States with a borrowed glove and a heart full of defiance. The minor leagues were brutal. He battled culture shock, language barriers, and endless nights of homesickness. But instead of breaking, Pedro adapted. Each bus ride and bullpen session chipped away at doubt and sharpened his resolve. His major league debut came on September 24, 1992. The Dodgers brought him in as a reliever. He threw hard with flair and command, but the front office never saw him as a starter. Too fragile, they said. Too unconventional. And so in 1993, he was traded to the Montreal Expos, a transaction that on paper looked like another dismissal. But in truth, it was the spark that would ignite greatness. In Montreal, under the guidance of manager Felipe Alou, Pedro was finally unleashed. He wasn't asked to fill innings, he was given the stage. By 1994, he posted an 11-5 record with a 3.42 ERA. But numbers didn't tell the full story. His presence on the mound had changed. He didn't just pitch to batters, he imposed psychological warfare, pitching with a rhythm that hypnotized and a demeanor that warned, "Enter the box at your own risk." The baseball world took notice. In 1997, Pedro became unstoppable. On June 3rd, he nearly achieved perfection. 9 perfect innings against the Padres before giving up a hit in the 10th. That season, he finished with a 17-8 record, a jaw-dropping 1.90 ERA, and 305 strikeouts. He became the first right-hander in nearly 2 decades to eclipse the 300 strikeout mark. The Cy Young Award was his, but his story was far from over. That winter, the Boston Red Sox made a franchise-altering trade. They sent Carl Pavano and Tony Armas Jr. to Montreal and brought Pedro to Fenway Park. For Boston, a city weighed down by the so-called curse of the Bambino, it wasn't just a transaction. It was hope incarnate. Pedro's arrival signaled the dawn of something historic. His 1999 season was otherworldly. A 23-4 record, a 2.07 ERA, and 313 strikeouts against just 37 walks. He struck out 5 future Hall of Famers in a single game against the Yankees and silenced a steroid era that inflated everyone else's numbers but his. On September 10, 1999, with the Yankees in town and playoff tension thick in the air, Pedro delivered what may be the single most dominant game in Red Sox history. 17 strikeouts in 9 innings, carving up a lineup that had haunted Boston for generations. The fans at Fenway weren't just witnessing a performance, they were watching a transformation. Pedro wasn't just beating teams, he was changing the culture of a cursed franchise. He followed that masterpiece with another jaw-dropping campaign in 2000, an 18-6 record, a 1.74 ERA, the lowest in the American League since 1978, and 284 strikeouts in 217 innings. He allowed just 7 home runs that year, despite facing some of the most potent lineups in baseball history. It was dominance at a level rarely seen, executed with surgical precision. But greatness, as always, came with pain. In 2003, Pedro helped lead Boston deep into the postseason. In Game 7 of the American League Championship Series against the Yankees, with a 5-2 lead in the 8th inning, Pedro stood on the mound exhausted but determined. Manager Grady Little left him in. The Yankees rallied. Aaron Boone's walk-off home run sent Pedro to the dugout, shoulders slumped, eyes distant. It wasn't just a loss. It was heartbreak magnified by the weight of nearly a century of Boston's postseason agony. Yet even in that defeat, Pedro's fire never dimmed. The following year, in 2004, he helped end 86 years of suffering. Though his postseason performance was shaky at times, his 6 strong innings in Game 3 of the World Series helped pave the way to a Red Sox sweep and a long-awaited championship. Pedro had finally delivered salvation to a city that had waited generations. That offseason, he signed with the New York Mets, a bittersweet departure that left Boston torn between gratitude and sorrow. In his first season with the Mets, Pedro proved he still had magic left, going 15-8 with a 2.82 ERA. But the wear and tear of a decade of dominance had begun to show. Shoulder injuries, dead arm, and missed time chipped away at his arsenal. Pedro adapted. He leaned more on guile, pitch sequencing, and psychology than raw velocity. Even as his fastball faded, he found ways to win, staying 3 moves ahead of hitters who still feared him. His career closed in Philadelphia in 2009. 9 starts, a final run, a World Series appearance, and a chance to walk away on his terms. When Pedro Martinez retired, he left behind a career stat line that reads like folklore. 219 wins, 100 losses. A 2.93 ERA. 3,154 strikeouts. 3 Cy Young Awards. 8 All-Star nods. A World Series ring. But those numbers only scratch the surface. Pedro was a cultural force, a symbol of pride for the Dominican Republic, a mentor, a magician. He didn't just inspire a generation of undersized pitchers, he changed what it meant to be great. His swagger, his intellect, his defiance. Pedro rewrote the rules of pitching and redefined the soul of baseball. In 2015, the Hall of Fame made it official. Pedro was inducted in his first year of eligibility, earning 91.1% of the vote. His induction speech was heartfelt and emotional, a tribute to his family, his faith, and his homeland. He carried the Dominican flag across the stage, draped in national pride, proving that his journey, from mango trees to Cooperstown, was never just about him. Today, Pedro Martinez continues to give back as a broadcaster, an analyst, and a mentor to young pitchers. But to fans, he remains the embodiment of baseball poetry. His name echoes through Fenway, through Latin America, through every little league field where a skinny kid dreams big. Because Pedro Martinez wasn't just a pitcher, he was a phenomenon. He was the storm. He was proof that with enough heart, belief, and brilliance, you don't have to be the biggest to become the greatest.
Pedro Martinez, un orgullo dominicano.
Martinez in the National League. 7